Trap is a serial killer thriller that's almost a chamber piece of a cat and mouse game between our main character Cooper, the serial killer, and the FBI profiler trying to capture him. The film does a satisfactory job of being a serial killer thriller film, but I think the novel and interesting things the film does is how it seats us in Cooper's perspective. This then leads to a very interesting commentary on society and holds the mirror up to our own face as to why we are rooting for a serial killer to win. I was worried I wasn't going to enjoy this film because I felt like the trailer revealed just a little too much information, and more so because I was disappointed with The Watchers, which was directed by Shyamalan's daughter. While Shyamalan's daughter is still developing as a filmmaker, Trap proves that Shyamalan is still a quality filmmaker with interesting things to say. So, while I did really enjoy this movie, I have a few gripes with it. My first gripe is that the style of the film is a little lackluster. Not bad, but nowhere near the style of something like Seven, which I analyzed recently. The opening title sequence is nothing special, and the film does nothing great with the cinematography or editing. The lore of the serial killer is a little bland as well. The butcher feels very generic. If you watched my analysis of The Watchers, you're probably thinking that I didn't like that Shyamalan's niece was a main character in the film, but I felt like it was a little bit more understandable because they had this funny fourth wall breaking moment where Shyamalan is actually her uncle and works for her. You know, that level of jokes I respect. And the movie, I actually enjoyed a lot of the funny parts of the movie, which I find interesting that there was funny parts in supposedly a serial killer thriller movie. And this movie is an example of how even without great editing, cinematography, style, or even writing, this can still be a good movie, which it is. And it's through the subtext, commentary, and point of view the filmmakers have and make the audience experience during the movie. The commentary of this film is fantastic, the first of which being centered around cell phones. A huge inspiration for this film is probably that Shyamalan had been taking his kids to concerts and noticing how cell phones crowd the view of the performance. Like in the film, being at a concert isn't good enough. You have to prove you were there by watching the concert through your cell phone while recording it. Our pleasure in life is being mediated by this tiny little screen in our pockets. It's something that we don't realize is strange until we see someone else doing it, like how Cooper feels a little out of place at the concert before we even know the police are after him. Cooper, though, isn't exempt of this, how cell phones mediate our pleasure. Cooper himself gets pleasure from watching his victims on his cell phone. This is a statement on how cell phones mediate a public pleasure, like going to a concert, and dark pleasures. While for most of us, we don't have a victim tied up in a basement, we've all watched something on our cell phone that we wouldn't be proud to show to others. I think Shyamalan's cell phone commentary is that this is generally bad. We are cramming our lived experience into a little rectangle, which is a way of describing seeing a movie, but that doesn't mean it's appropriate for our whole life. Life is a multitude of experiences with many different senses, and by narrowing our cone of perception down to the audio video coming out of a small little screen, our experience of the world is diminished. Cell phones then lead to another interesting commentary. Lady Raven uses her cell phone to live stream herself to help her save Cooper's victim. I initially thought this was a silly and outlandish point in the movie, but I realized this was less of a realistic element of the movie, but more of a symbolic point to represent the push and pull of two different ideas in the film, and that is the concept of the collective and the individual. Lady Raven has a few clues, but can't solve the problem of where the victim is on her own. So she uses her cell phone as a portal to tap into the intelligences of all her fans to create a hive mind, or something of a similar structure to how an AI works, to solve the problem. This event in the film illuminates a much larger subtext of the film. Cooper, while being a serial killer, also struggles to be natural in social situations, so he tries to conform by putting on a mask. He does this for even his daughter. The knowledge of him being a serial killer is, in a lot of ways, his individuality. Cooper needs to keep his individuality hidden from the hive mind of society, or else the hive mind will snuff it out. Now, this feels like a little bit of a leap. If we remove the context of why Cooper needs to keep his individuality a secret, this massively changes the subtext of the film. The film goes through a story of a serial killer trying to escape the FBI, to a story of how individuality needs to be kept hidden or else it will be consumed by the hive mind and groupthink. I'll even admit this is a little bit of a harebrained theory, but it feels like this is the secret Shyamalan is trying to tell us. Why is Cooper's serial killer persona so generic? Why is the story filmed in such a way that we are rooting for Cooper to escape? We all are secretly hoping he finds a way out of this trap. That's where the suspense of the film comes from. Even though this movie is about a serial killer, there are plenty of funny and silly moments, like the after credits scene where the t-shirt vendor finds out Cooper was the serial killer and loses his mind over it. Why would he put that in a movie if the movie was about punishing Cooper or highlighting how deranged Cooper really was? And finally, I don't think Shyamalan would have done this if he didn't want us to root for Cooper. It's implied that he escapes, and not only that he escapes to a life where his family persona or mask isn't needed, so he can be who he truly wants to be. I think if Shyamalan really wanted us to care that deeply about Cooper's crimes, he would have shown him actually getting punished for it or killed. In a way, I see these events as a way to free Cooper from his persona of conformity so he could be truly free. Now, this is all a theory, and unable to confirm this unless Shyamalan actually comes out and says it. And I could be entirely wrong about this because it is a little wacky, but this is sort of the angle that I was able to enjoy the film through, and that's why I like film criticism, is because you're able to sort of deep dive into films and explore the possibilities of what they could mean, what they're trying to tell us. And this is how I make the structure of Trap make sense. How else does it make sense? The story is centered around Cooper being our hero, even though he's an anti-hero and a bad guy, obviously, killing people. But we want him to succeed. And it has a good ending in the sense that he is able to escape. And I would say this adds to the general quality of the film, because we don't know whether or not we want to root for Cooper, really. We kind of feel bad about rooting for Cooper, even though the story is kind of pushing us to rooting for Cooper. And I think because of this commentary and the subtext of Trap, I think it is a solid, good movie, even though it doesn't do great in a lot of other areas. It's still a solid film, and I personally, as far as my grading scale goes, I'd give it a B-. Thanks for listening to my review and analysis of Trap. It would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel, and if you wouldn't mind supporting me on Patreon, it goes a long way to helping me make more of these videos. Thank you.